In the cold silence of the Galactic court, two sisters stood under a sky of glowing light, their silver hair shining like frost beneath the council's eyes. Lyra and Seren of the House of Vera had once been heroes of the Empire, but now they stood accused of treason. The High Chancellor's voice echoed through the chamber. Powerful and cruel, you broke our law. You aided the enemy, and for that you must suffer. His words rolled like thunder. Shaking the sisters' hearts, Lyra lifted her chin, her violet eyes burning with quiet fire. We saved children, not enemies, she said, her voice trembling but strong. If mercy is a crime, then we are guilty. The Chancellor's cold laughter filled the hall. Mercy is weakness, he replied, and weakness is forbidden. Seren, the younger one, could not hold back her tears. She clutched her sister's arm, her voice barely a whisper. Lyra, please stop. They'll hurt you, but it was too late. The council had made its decision with a flash of light. A glowing orb rose between them, sealing their fate. Lyra Vera and Seren Vera, the voice of the court AI declared, you are hereby sentenced to exile. You will be sent to a world forgotten by the stars, a planet of chaos and decay. You will live among primitive creatures known as humans. The crowd gasped. Exile to Earth was worse than death. A beam of white light engulfed the sisters. Their armor cracked, their powers drained, their wings of energy folded into nothing. They screamed as the light tore through them, leaving only fragments of memory. Lyra's last thought before the darkness took her was simple. Protect Seren, then everything vanished. The next moment came with pain, cold, and sound. Snow fell quietly over a dark forest. A strange world filled with whispers and wind. Lyra opened her eyes and saw trees for the first time, their trunks stretching into the sky like pillars of an unknown temple. Her body ached. Her breath came out as mist. Beside her, Seren lay unconscious. Her silver skin bruised and dull. Lyra crawled toward her, holding her close. Seren, wake up, please, she whispered. But Seren didn't move. The air was freezing, and Lyra could feel the weakness inside her veins. The power that once flowed like lightning was gone, replaced by the fragility of flesh. She looked up at the sky, no stars she knew, no constellations from her home, only an endless sea of white clouds. We're alone, she whispered, far away. In a wooden cabin deep in the same forest, Ethan Cole, a wildlife researcher, was studying wolf tracks when the ground shook beneath him. A distant explosion flashed in the sky, lighting up the night. His dog barked wildly. What the hell was that? Ethan muttered, grabbing his flashlight and camera. He followed the smoke until he saw something impossible. A burning crater in the middle of the forest, steam rising from twisted metal that glowed blue. He froze when he saw them. Two women lying in the snow, half covered in strange cloth that shimmered like liquid glass. Ethan rushed to them, kneeling beside the taller one. Her pulse was faint but steady. Hey, can you hear me? He said. Don't worry, I'll get you out. Lyra's eyes opened slightly. She saw a face, human, warm, filled with confusion and kindness. She didn't understand his words, but his tone felt like safety. Ethan wrapped his coat around them. Lifting Seren first, she was lighter than he expected. Almost weightless, Lyra tried to speak, but her throat burned. Don't talk, Ethan said softly. You're safe now. He didn't know that those words would echo across galaxies one day. He carried them through the forest, snow crunching under his boots, his flashlight flickering, shadows moving among the trees behind him. The wreckage pulsed faintly, sending a signal far beyond the clouds. Lyra felt the pain in her chest deepen as they moved. She wanted to warn him, but her voice was gone. She could sense something else, too. Something alive in the sky, searching when they reached the cabin. Ethan laid them near the fireplace, covering them with blankets. He poured warm water, checking their injuries. Their skin shimmered faintly under the light. What are you? He whispered to himself. But part of him didn't care. They needed help, and that was all that mattered. Hours passed, the fire burned low, and snow piled against the windows. Seren finally stirred. Her eyes opening, glowing faintly blue, she looked at Ethan with fear and wonder. Shh, it's okay, he said gently, pointing at his chest. Ethan, Seren blinked, trying to repeat it. Eep. Then he smiled, and Lyra, watching weakly, felt something she had never known before, trust. But outside, above the clouds, in the silent dark of orbit, metallic eyes opened. A hunter probe received the distress signal, its red lights blinking as it sent a message back to the stars. Target located. Exiles alive. The sisters' punishment had only begun, and Earth, had just become the center of a war it never asked for. The storm outside raged through the night. Thunder shaking the small wooden cabin, Ethan stayed awake beside the fire, watching over the two strange girls he had rescued. Their clothes shimmered faintly even in the dim light, and their skin looked too perfect, too unreal to belong to any human. He pressed a damp cloth to the older sister's forehead. She was burning with fever, whispering words in a language he couldn't understand. Every now and then she would flinch as if haunted by dreams. Seren, the younger one, lay quietly under the blanket, her breathing slow and steady. Sometimes her fingers twitched, tiny sparks of blue light pulsing between them before fading away. Ethan frowned, thinking maybe he was just tired. Maybe he was imagining things when dawn came. Soft light filtered through the frosted windows. Snow had stopped. The forest outside was silent. Ethan brewed tea on the stove, the smell filling the small room. He turned when he heard a sound. Lyra was awake, sitting up slowly, her silver hair messy, her eyes wary and bright. She looked at him like a cornered animal. "It's okay," Ethan said gently, raising his hands. "You're safe here." She didn't answer. Her gaze darted around the cabin, taking in every object like a soldier scanning a battlefield. Her hand went instinctively to her chest, feeling the absence of something. Her power, her link to the stars, it was gone. Seren stirred next, blinking against the light when she saw Lyra. She gasped and hugged her sister, whispering in their language. Ethan stepped back, giving them space, his heart racing with questions. Who were they? Where did they come from? And why did they fall from the sky? After a few moments, Seren looked up at him. Her eyes wide but gentle, she pointed to herself. Seren, then to her sister. Lyra, her voice was soft, the words shaped carefully. Ethan smiled, pointing to himself. Ethan, Seren repeated it slowly. Then, she smiled shyly. And for the first time since their crash, Lyra's tense shoulders relaxed just a little. Days passed and the sisters began to recover. Though they still spoke little, Ethan noticed strange things. Machines in his cabin flickering when they were near, metal bending slightly under Lyra's touch. Seren healing faster than any human should, yet both seemed fragile, lost, like children in a foreign world one evening. As the fire crackled and snow fell outside again, Ethan brought them food, soup and bread. Seren smiled gratefully and tried to mimic his eating motions. Lyra, however, barely touched hers, her eyes always watching the window. She felt something approaching, a pressure in the air, faint but growing. The same kind of signal she once used to detect enemy ships. It was weak, but it was there, she whispered to herself. They found us. Seren froze, sensing it too. Ethan noticed their sudden fear. What's wrong? He asked, but they didn't answer. Outside, far above the clouds, a hunter drone entered Earth's atmosphere, invisible to human eyes, scanning for alien signatures. It found the faint trace of Vera energy in the forest and locked on. Back in the cabin, Lyra grabbed Seren's hand, speaking quickly in their native tongue. Ethan tried to calm them. Hey, it's okay. You're safe here. But Lyra shook her head fiercely, pointing to the sky. No, danger, she managed to say. Ethan followed her gesture, frowning. Danger? From what? The lights flickered. A low hum filled the air and then silence. Ethan grabbed his flashlight and stepped toward the door. Stay here, he said firmly. Lyra tried to stop him, but he was already outside, snow crunching beneath his boots, the night sky glowing faintly red far above. The drone descended silently through the trees, scanning the area, its red eye glowing like fire. Ethan's breath caught. He'd seen drones before, but nothing like this. It looked alive. Suddenly, a beam of light swept across the snow. Locking onto the cabin, Lyra ran outside, shouting something in her language. The drone turned toward her, mechanical voice hissing. Exile detected. Ethan raised his flare gun without thinking, firing straight into the drone's eye. The explosion lit the forest in orange. Sparks rained down. The drone reeled backward. Damaged but not destroyed, Lyra grabbed Ethan, dragging him back toward the cabin, her strength shocking him. Inside, Seren held her hands up, blue light swirling around her fingers, forming a small barrier that shimmered like water. The drone fired again, its beam slicing through the trees. But the energy hit Seren's shield and scattered into mist. She screamed from the effort, falling to her knees. Lyra caught her, yelling her name. Ethan ran to the window, heart pounding. What the hell are they after? Lyra turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly. Us, she said simply, her voice low and broken. The drone retreated, rising back into the clouds, its systems recording everything, transmitting coordinates back to orbit. Lyra knew what that meant. The hunters had found them. The council would soon follow. Seren trembled in her arms, whispering weakly. They won't stop. Lyra looked at Ethan. The human who had risked his life for strangers. She saw no fear in his eyes, only determination. We fight, Ethan said quietly, surprising even himself. Whatever they are, they won't take you. Lyra stared at him, unable to find words for the first time. An alien warrior felt something she couldn't explain. Hope born from humanity. Outside, the sky flickered once more. Distant lights moving among the stars. The hunters were not retreating. They were preparing, and deep in the cold cabin, 3 souls, 2 from the stars and 1 from Earth, prepared for the storm that was coming. The night was far from over. The next morning came cold and silent. The forest looked calm, but the air carried something heavy, something alive. Lyra stood near the window, her silver hair catching the pale light, her eyes fixed on the sky. She could feel it. The hunters were closer now. Ethan was packing supplies, his hands moving quickly, his mind racing. He had seen things that defied reason, aliens, energy shields, machines that hunted them, but none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was keeping them safe. Seren sat near the fire, her face pale, her strength still weak from the night before. She looked at Ethan with quiet gratitude. "You help us," she said softly. Her words broken but clear. Ethan smiled faintly. "You'd do the same," he replied, though he knew deep inside. He didn't even understand what he was up against. Lyra turned suddenly. "We move," she said, pointing toward the mountains. "Hide," Ethan nodded, grabbing his backpack. "There's an old ranger station 2 miles north," he said. "We can take shelter there." Within minutes they were out in the snow again. The forest stretched endlessly around them, the cold biting their skin. Ethan led the way. Seren followed weakly, and Lyra guarded their back, her instincts sharp above the clouds. The hunter craft hovered, invisible to human radar, its metallic surface shifting like liquid. A single command pulsed through its core. "Retrieve the exiles. Terminate witnesses." The drone swarm deployed, black shadows cutting through the sky like knives. As the group reached the frozen river, the first drone appeared. Its red sensor flashing through the fog. Ethan froze. "Down!" Lyra hissed, pulling him behind a rock. The drone scanned the area, its beam passing inches from Ethan's face. He held his breath, the air thick with static. Seren's hand trembled, blue sparks forming again. Lyra shook her head, whispering, "No, too weak." But Seren's eyes filled with defiance. "They'll find us," she said, before Lyra could stop her. Seren raised her hand and fired a pulse of light. The drone exploded in a burst of flame, metal raining into the snow. For a moment there was silence. Then a high-pitched tone filled the air. Lyra's heart dropped. "Signal sent," she whispered. "They know." Dozens of red lights appeared in the distance, moving fast through the mist. "Run!" Ethan shouted, grabbing Seren's arm. They sprinted through the forest, branches whipping their faces, the roar of engines closing in behind them. Lasers scorched the ground, trees burst into fire. Ethan stumbled but kept going. Lyra turned mid-run, firing a shard of energy from her palm. It struck one drone, sending it spiraling into the river. But for everyone that fell, 2 more appeared. The hunters were endless, efficient, unfeeling. They reached the ranger station just as another blast shook the ground. Ethan kicked open the door, pulling the sisters inside. He pushed furniture against the windows, breathing hard. "Will this hold?" he asked. Lyra shook her head. "No, but we make them bleed." Ethan stared at her. Surprised by the steel in her voice, she looked different now, her fear replaced with fierce purpose. The drones circled the cabin, scanning for heat. Ethan loaded his old hunting rifle, even though he knew bullets wouldn't do much. Still, he refused to hide. Seren crouched beside Lyra, whispering, "We can't keep running." Lyra nodded, touching her forehead to her sisters. "Then we fight." Outside, the air cracked as the drones opened fire. Glass shattered, wood splintered. Ethan fired back, the recoil shaking his arm. One of his shots hit a drone's lens, making it crash into the snow. Lyra moved like lightning, using her fading power to create short bursts of energy, cutting through the attackers. Her body trembling from the effort, Seren joined her, her blue light dancing across the walls like living fire. The sisters fought side by side, alien power meeting human courage. Ethan reloaded, shouting over the noise, "How many more?" Lyra didn't answer. She could feel the energy signatures in the distance. Thousands, the hunters were not stopping. One of the drones fired a missile. The explosion threw Ethan across the room. The heat searing his arm, Lyra screamed, running to him. "Ethan!" she shouted, holding him as smoke filled the air. His face pale but eyes still open. "I'm fine," he coughed. "Don't stop." The station trembled, the roof collapsing halfway. Seren looked at the sky, her voice shaking. "They won't stop until we're gone." Lyra clenched her fists, tears mixing with ash. "Then they'll have to kill us all." She stood, light forming around her again, stronger this time, brighter, her human form glowing as the last remnants of her power awoke. The drones hesitated, their sensors confused by the sudden surge. Lyra unleashed a wave of energy, a blinding blast that tore through the forest, shredding machines into dust. When the light faded, silence returned. Smoke curled into the sky and snow fell softly again. Ethan opened his eyes weakly, staring at her glowing figure. You saved us," he whispered. Lyra sank to her knees, her power gone, her hands trembling. "No," she said softly. "I only delayed them. Above, high beyond the clouds, the command ship received the data." A deep voice spoke through the dark. "Target confirmed. Prepare planetary cleansing." Lyra looked at the stars through the broken roof, a tear sliding down her cheek. "They're coming," she whispered. And this time they wouldn't just hunt, they would burn. Snow fell gently over the ruins of the ranger station. Smoke curled from broken beams, and silence replaced the thunder of war. Lyra knelt beside Ethan, her hands shaking as she wrapped his arm with a torn piece of her cloak. The wound was deep, but his eyes stayed strong. "You should have left me," Ethan said weakly. His breath fogging in the cold air, Lyra shook her head. "Humans never leave," she whispered, repeating the words she had heard him say before, her voice soft but filled with meaning. Seren stood near the doorway, her blue eyes scanning the horizon. The forest glowed faintly with fire and ice. She felt the echo of their enemies still above, orbiting, watching, waiting for the command to strike. "They won't stop," Seren said quietly. "We must go far." Beyond their eyes, Ethan pushed himself up with effort. "There's an old research bunker in the valley," he said. "Hidden under the ice, no one will find you there." Lyra looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You'll come with us," she said simply. It wasn't a question, it was a promise. For days they moved through the wilderness, crossing frozen rivers and sleeping under broken stars. Ethan taught them how to build fires, how to hide their tracks, how to survive without power or machines in return. Seren healed him with faint traces of her energy, her light glowing softly over his wounds each night. As time passed, something began to change. The fear that once ruled them slowly turned into connection. Laughter filled the silence. Small gestures replaced the need for words. Seren grew curious about Earth, its music, its scent, its creatures, while Lyra watched Ethan with quiet wonder, seeing strength in his simplicity. One night, under the glow of the aurora, they found shelter inside a frozen cave. Blue light danced across the ice walls like living fire. Ethan sat near the entrance. Staring at the stars, Lyra joined him silently, her hands resting on her knees. "You miss your home," Ethan said softly. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "My home was never kind," she whispered. "But it was ours." Ethan turned toward her. "And now?" Lyra looked at him, her eyes reflecting the northern lights. "Now I don't know," she said. "Here I feel small but free." He smiled faintly. "Welcome to being human." She tilted her head, studying his face. "Human." She repeated the word slowly. "You fight, you fear, but you love without reason." Ethan laughed quietly. "Yeah, that's us." For a moment, silence fell again. But it was gentle, filled with warmth. Lyra felt something inside her chest. Something new. It wasn't power or duty, it was fragile but alive. Seren, resting deeper in the cave, opened her eyes slightly, smiling as she watched them from afar. She understood before her sister did. Lyra had finally begun to feel what humans called love. But above the planet, in the void of space, the Galactic Council's warship loomed, massive and silent inside. The High Chancellor stood before a holographic image of Earth, his expression cold. "The Vera sisters have resisted capture," a robotic voice reported. "Human interference detected," the Chancellor frowned. "Then we erase the infection," he said. "Prepare planetary cleansing." Back on Earth, Seren suddenly gasped, clutching her chest. Lyra rushed to her side. "What is it?" Seren's voice shook. "They're coming, a warship. It's too big, too strong." Ethan's eyes widened. You mean they'll attack Earth? Seren nodded weakly. They will destroy everything. Lyra stood, her face pale but her resolve firm. No, she said. We won't let them. Ethan looked at her. How? You barely have any power left. Lyra met his gaze. Power is not what wins wars, courage does. They began to prepare. Ethan gathered tools, old radios and maps. Seren traced strange symbols into the ice, trying to create a signal strong enough to reach orbit. Their only hope was to make the Council see that humanity was not their enemy. Hours passed. The air inside the cave shimmered as Seren concentrated, her light spreading like a heartbeat. Ethan stood beside her, guiding wires and power cells from his equipment. If we can boost your signal, maybe they'll hear you, he said. Lyra watched them both, her heart caught between fear and admiration. She could see it clearly now. The thing that made humanity special wasn't strength or technology. It was the refusal to surrender when the machine powered up. A beam of blue light shot through the ice, reaching the heavens. Seren's voice echoed through it, soft yet powerful, to the Council of the Stars. This world is not a threat. Humanity is life, not chaos. The signal pulsed outward. Disappearing into the void, silence followed. Then the ice shook violently, a tremor running through the earth. Lyra looked up. They heard, she whispered. Ethan grabbed her hand. Then let's make them listen. For the first time since their exile, the sisters were not running. They were standing with humanity, ready to defend a world that had shown them kindness. Above them, the clouds began to glow with fire, the warship entering the atmosphere like a falling sun. The final judgment had come. Lyra looked at Ethan, their eyes meeting in the storm's light. She didn't need words to say what her heart already knew. Love had made her human, and that was something no empire could destroy. The sky above Earth burned red. Clouds split apart as the warship descended, its engines rumbling like thunder across the frozen land. Animals fled the forests, the air filled with electric charge, and the planet itself seemed to hold its breath. Lyra stood at the mouth of the cave, her eyes glowing faintly. She could see the warship's shadow moving through the clouds like a dark god. Seren stood beside her, weak but determined. Ethan tightened his gloves, holding the small transmitter they had built together. They'll destroy everything, Ethan said, his voice trembling. Cities, people, all of it. Lyra turned to him, her gaze steady. Not if we stop them, Seren looked up. We can't win, Lyra. Not against that, she whispered, but maybe we can make them see. Lyra understood what her sister meant. A silent look passed between them, one filled with love, memory, and unspoken goodbye, Ethan noticed. His heart tightening. No, he said quickly. Whatever you're thinking, we'll find another way. Lyra shook her head, stepping closer to him. You gave us another way, Ethan. You showed us what humanity means, to protect, to care, to love even in the face of fear, she said softly. Now it's our turn. Ethan grabbed her hand. I'm not letting you die. Lyra smiled faintly. You can't stop me, she whispered. But you can believe in me. The ground trembled again as beams of light shot down from the sky. Slicing through the ice and rock, the Council's voice boomed from above, cold and merciless. Exiles of Vera, surrender or this planet will be erased. Lyra stepped forward, her hair lifting in the rising wind. If you wish to destroy love, then you destroy yourselves, she whispered. Seren pressed her palms to the ice, her body glowing brighter, her voice echoing across the cave walls. I'll open the link, she said. You speak to them. Sister, Ethan helped her steady herself, watching as blue light rose around them, swirling like a living storm. Lyra's mark of exile began to shine again, the symbol burning on her wrist, connecting her to the ship above. Suddenly, the world around her vanished, replaced by the glowing halls of the Galactic Council. She stood in a holographic chamber surrounded by towering figures of light. The High Chancellor stared down, his voice sharp. You defy your punishment again. Lyra raised her chin. No, she said. I complete it. By standing with these primitives? The Chancellor sneered. By loving one of them? Lyra took a step forward, her voice rising. You call them primitive, but they are stronger than you will ever be. They feel pain and still choose kindness. They face death and still protect life. They fight not for power, but for one another, the Council murmured, their lights flickering. The Chancellor's face darkened. You are blinded by weakness, Lyra shook her head. No, I am finally free, she said, and I will not let you harm this world. Outside the holographic link, Serene's energy began to fade, her body shaking violently. Ethan held her hand, shouting, "Seren, stop. You're killing yourself." Seren smiled faintly. "Life for life," she whispered. "That's how humans taught us." Above them, the warship's weapons powered up, thousands of beams gathering light for one massive strike. Lyra could feel it through the link. The end of Earth only seconds away. She looked up at the council, tears in her eyes. "If you cannot see their worth," she said, "then see mine." She placed her hand over her heart, sending her energy directly into the link. A surge of light exploding through every screen and sensor. On the ship, alarms blared. Systems short-circuited, power failing. The massive weapon folding back upon itself. The energy reversing direction, cascading through the ship's core. The explosion lit the sky like a second sunrise. Waves of color spreading across the heavens. People on Earth looked up from cities and villages, seeing the impossible beauty of light dancing across the clouds, not knowing it was born from sacrifice. Ethan screamed her name as the beam faded, rushing to the center of the cave. Lyra lay on the ground, her body dimming. Her skin no longer glowing, Seren knelt beside her, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," Seren whispered. "You saved them." Lyra looked at Ethan one last time, her voice barely a whisper. "Keep this world safe," she said. "It's home now." Ethan held her hand tightly, tears falling onto her cold fingers. "You are home," he whispered. Lyra smiled faintly, and the light in her eyes faded. The cave filled with silence once more, only the soft hum of energy lingering in the air. Outside, the warship was gone. The council had vanished and Earth was safe. Weeks passed, snow melted, spring returned to the land. Ethan built a small monument near the river. 2 stones side by side, one for Lyra, one for Seren. Though Seren still lived, she refused to leave the place where her sister rested. She spent her days watching the sky, waiting for a sign, hoping the stars would understand what her sister had done. One night, as the moon rose high, a single beam of light appeared in the sky. A soft whisper carried through the air. "Protected world." Seren smiled through her tears. She looked toward the stars and whispered, "She did it." And far beyond, in the endless dark of space, the story of 2 exiled sisters and 1 brave human became legend. A story that reminded every world that even in the coldest corners of the galaxy, love is the most powerful force of all.